Get a 5-minute business book review, pivotal moments with failed businesses, and hear an interview with a business disruptor who will share their $10,000 mistake. This is the Forward Motion Business Show with Professor Ken and Professor Paul A Marino. Hit new heights. Start with Forward Motion.
Hey, welcome to the Motion Business Show. I'm Professor Ken.
And I'm Professor Paul Marino.
And we're great to be back here in studio here at United International College. And we have Shellie Solomon, the president of Children of Inmates, with us. So thank you for joining us. I appreciate you being here. And Paul is we're going to go through a bunch of different things today. We're going to focus on for our business book, we're going to focus on range, a sort of a book on specialization, which will have some breakdown and commentary. And for our business case, we'll talk about Polaroid, because I think Polaroid really sums up this particular specialization segment.
No
because
question.
Right, because they didn't innovate, they weren't really unique in what they did. And then Shellie will give us some background on the Children of Inmates and how she's making an impact and innovating here in the community. So we look forward to that as well. So Paul, why don't you start us off? Give us a brief intro, since you know Shellie for some time, and let's start the conversation there.
Well, I've known Shellie for some time, and I'm very impressed with the work she does, and I'm very impressed the way she goes about it. She's one of the few women who actually, that I've met anyway, who have an actual PhD in this particular field. And she's very analytical. I read her thesis, and it's the kind of thesis you have to read every chapter 2 or 3 times to understand exactly what she's going at. But she uses a very scientific approach, and she kind of breaks that down to its simplest blocks and applies that locally. So Shellie, welcome to the show. Tell us a little bit about Children of Inmates, and what you're focused on and what you're trying to accomplish.
Well, thank you very much, Paul, for having me. I'm Ken. I'm excited to be here. So with Children of Inmates, I always start with the fact that I'm an accidental criminologist. I did not, I studied economics and land and natural resource economics, and but ended up working at the Justice Department, and then ended up working on some social problems when I was working. So I tend to start things very upside down. I didn't start out as a child advocate at all, but I got pulled into being a child advocate. And with Children of Inmates, we were trying to figure out how to work on recidivism, particularly with gun violence, because we were looking at, okay, who picks up a gun and shoots, and
Right.
and criminals have a criminal career, right? So we were looking at, okay, how do we get people re-entered more? And we were working with the faith-based groups, and this group of women came and said, hey, we're not really into working with ex-offenders, but can you help them? Their children, we think, have some challenges, and we'd like to work with them. And I was like, okay, I'll help you, and went to a meeting. They were trying to write a grant, and I realized I didn't know how to write a grant. So I was like, oh, okay, let me help you, because I knew about grants. But I was like, I don't know anything about kids. So y'all know what to do with these kids, right? And they're like, yeah. So we won the grant. And then I realized with Children of Inmates that when I was writing the grant, everything, in 2008, which was about 15 years ago. I mean, there wasn't a lot known about how incarceration affects children. And there's sort of like this forgotten population that don't get picked up in any system. They're not necessarily in the social service system. They're not picked up in the criminal justice system. They're just kind of, they're out there silently, victimized by what's going on. And, there wasn't a lot known about how to serve them. And that's kind of how I got involved, is that we had our first event, and I realized, okay, these kids need a lot more than a mentor. There's a lot going on here.
Sure.
These kids are facing a very difficult situation. So.
Well, if I understand it correctly, when you look at the statistics, foster children have a very difficult time, but Children of Inmates are even further more difficult dealing with than a foster population. They have some very unique issues that they have to deal with, correct?
Well, I don't know if they're more difficult than foster kids, but there's certainly a side and And a system, I think they end up in a more difficult position because there's no system that picks them up.
Yeah,
With
that's what I was
foster care
referring to.
children, a system picks them up, the
Right.
Department of Children and Families. But when children of inmates, I mean, basically an arrest occurs. The officer asks if there's children present. They'll ask, who do you want to take care of your kids? And, they'll indicate either the other biological parent or, somebody nearby. And that's it. There's no
Right.
follow-up done with these kids to
Right.
figure out, are they okay or what's happened with them. And so in that sense, I think they do have a different kind because there's a lot of stigma and shame associated with incarceration. And the kids have no way to talk about it. As a school resource officer said to me once, if a kid tells us their parents incarcerated, we just kind of look at our sheet and there's no box to check.
This is the Forward Motion Business Show with Professor Ken and Professor Paul A Marino. Hit new heights. Start with Forward Motion.